Well, thank you for that, Dan. I appreciate being here. I think it's a great group that you put together to talk about manufacturing because clearly it's a significant part already of our economy and it should be in our future moving forward. So having this kind of a group to come together, talk about your common interests, and then bring those forward to each other to help work on them or to elected officials or appointed officials is critical. It's how things work. Somebody came up and they said, a reporter came up and said, how did you think about House Bill blah, blah, blah? They didn't like House Bill blah, blah, blah. And I said, he kept trying to find, who's it for and how did it come about? And I finally said, Mr. Reporter, there's not an oracle in the hallway that we consult for good legislation. Legislation comes from the people. It's a conversation at a group like this. It's a letter that somebody writes. It's a personal experience that you have in your own working world. So the opportunity to meet with you this morning, I'm going to be telling you some things. I sure hope to hear back from you either today or in the future, things that we can do that can help your businesses grow and thrive in the state of Michigan. So again, congratulations. The other item that I'd like to just mention, it got pressed briefly, but it's a $400 million savings for our state businesses, not just manufacturers, but all of our businesses. Around February, the federal government came to us and said, we're going to move unemployment, we're going to extend it, I think it was another 16 weeks to 99 weeks. And we reacted negatively to that. 99 weeks is an awfully long time to be on unemployment. And there are statistics that show that as unemployment ends, people go to work. And so 99 weeks, despite how bad it is, that's a long, long time. We didn't want to do that. That's an extra expense to you as businesses to pay that, but the federal government said, well, we've collected $53 million from your businesses. If you don't vote yes on this extension, we will send $53 million from Michigan to the state that does. And they had the power to do that. Appalling, in my opinion, but they did. We couldn't challenge them under the Constitution. So we were stuck with a pretty tough choice. We can't let $53 million that you paid out of the state to somebody else. So we came up with an idea, and we've reduced, in the legislation that approved that extension, we've reduced your state obligation by 6 weeks. And in the aggregate, so instead of being responsible for 20 weeks of unemployment, 26 weeks of unemployment, employers now will be responsible for 20. And that 6 weeks in the aggregate is a savings of $400 million to our state businesses. We were glad to pull that one off. I think as the feds left the state thinking they had gotten a yes vote from us, all of a sudden they realized that they had to pick up an extra 6 weeks out of their coffers. And so a little bit of a kind of a brinksmanship game, but one that we exacted a pretty hefty toll for our state businesses, and I hope that you can find that helpful moving forward. It was our $8 billion deficit in 10 years, and we dealt with it. Because all the prior budgets were just moving deck chairs around, or using stimulus money, or collecting taxes early. Little tricks that no longer exist. The cuts were horrific and painful to many, many segments of our state. State employees are taking $180 million in concessions, for instance, at the state level. Municipal governments are making their own changes. Schools are making their own changes. We tried to be soft where we could. Schools was a priority for many. It was a 1.4% cut. It's the loudest group in terms of complaining, but it was the smallest cut out of 15 budgets. So we try to keep education and healthcare intact. If we've done our job correctly, and let's keep praying that the economy holds on and improves a bit, if we've done our job correctly, we won't have anything near $1 billion deficit. We're still going to have a deficit next year. It won't be large. And then we project, we move on to an area where we'll start to get into the black a bit and have some money to take a look at where we wish to spend it, as opposed to how do we cut it? Do we restore programs or not? Do we do a tax refund or not? That's a conversation I hope to have a couple of years from now. So we got the budget done. We've made a lot of changes for our public employers in terms of we've changed tenure in the schools. You have to prove that you can keep your job. It's based on merit. You still have protection. You cannot be fired for arbitrary or capricious purposes. But you don't get a guaranteed job either. You have to continue to perform. We're instituting a policy across the board, from elected officials right down to any level of employee at any state agency, where you either have to pay 20% of your health care or the employer can grant you only a fixed amount. $5,500 if you're an individual, $11,500 for a couple, and $15,500 for a family. And that is going to actually move on the 24th. We're still finishing the exact details because it's an either-or situation for the employer. So the city of Livonia could decide that the 80-20 is better for them than the hard cap. And we need to just finesse out a little bit how they make that election so that we can control healthcare costs. We're not after public employees. I'm not after myself. I took a 10% pay cut. I have a defined contribution plan. I'm already at 13%. We're moving to the 20%. I'm still not near what you're doing, nor are our employees. And all that we're asking public employees are to match or get close to what's happening in the private sector. So we're still working on that. That's going on. There's, another dozen bills I could talk about, but what I think might be better for you is if you'd like to ask questions about the tax plan or anything that's specific to businesses, I'll be glad to answer that. And before I go there, there's one more important piece that we haven't gotten to yet. It will be under discussion this fall, and that's property tax. The personal property tax is a very important issue to you. It's also an extremely critical issue to our municipalities throughout the state. It's not going to be easy. It will be far more difficult than the income tax. The personal property tax generates a great deal of money that allow our municipalities to operate. And all of our municipalities have suffered significant cuts from the state level. So until we can address funding for municipalities to provide fire and police protection in schools and the environment in which you wish to operate your business and your employees wish to work, it's going to be difficult to effectuate a change in the personal property tax. But I'm proud to tell you, at least for the first time, we're going to have a discussion about it. We're going to bring stakeholders in, and we're going to try and make a pathway to lowering our personal property tax or changing it so we're more competitive on that basis as well. What's the bottom line? Getting more of you to stay here, getting more of you to move here, getting more of you to hire. So with that, I'll take questions. Jay?
Jeff, I applaud you. Great job on the changes you think. One of the things that's discomforting from a private sector point of view is how many times this tax has been altered or changed. But what's the comfort level that you have that this will stay the way you just outlined it for some reasonable period of time?
The change is so dramatic and so large that I think just by its own weight, it's going to take at least a year for people to become accustomed to it, Treasury to work out the regulations and put it into place, and then a couple more years to see what the effect is. And it's going to take a little bit of time. The MBT had an immediate and negative impact. So people were screaming almost immediately. I don't think we'll have that kind of pressure. But Jay, it's a great question because part of the problem with term limits is all of us that voted on it, every single person will be gone 5 years from now. And somebody will come along with a good idea. And there's no grizzled veteran to grab him by the collar and say, we tried that, or we thought about that. So I wish I could give you an absolute. I think the sheer size of it, though, is going to give it some legs. And there are some discussions in third-party groups about changing term limits that may or may not happen. But you've got a window of at least, I'd say, 3 to 4 years before anyone should even think about addressing it. Any other questions? By a group?
I have a question, John.
Yes.
I was going to ask you at work, but I'm not going to. Because I hope you know the answer. And it has more to do with what's going on in the administration. There was an announcement, I think, yesterday that there was a person appointed by the governor as the Southeast Michigan Business Coordinator. Are you familiar?
I've heard of the announcement. I don't know the person.
Okay. Did you know anything about what the office is supposed to do?
Well, what he's trying to do now, we've moved from taking a patient on the table, bleeding profusely and stopping the gaps, to now looking at how do we run our government and how do we coordinate our services better. And that type of appointment is designed to better coordinate our services, to be kind of boots on the ground. Because one of the complaints we're getting is you're not listening, we don't know where to go. You have money, but it's not getting to where it belongs. And I don't know the entire job description for that. It's just better coordination of state services. As we move into the fall, what we'll be looking at is how do we provide services as a state, and we'll be looking at a regulatory environment.